The WWE Hall of Fame. We didn't talk about it because, this part of it because it was not even talked about within the past few days, let alone the past few hours of it actually happening at the Hall of Fame. So we didn't know who were the legacy people were going to be. And now that we do, and they did somewhat of a minute or 30 seconds, but depending on the person, we probably do a more detailed thing on every member of the Legacy Award for this year. Some of these names honestly should be in the Hall of Fame, just based on their history with the WWE in some capacity. Others not so much. I mean, but so it makes sense for them to be in that legacy wing, I guess we can call it. But I mean, at least some of these I know for sure. Like the first one on top of the list, Stan the Man Stasiak. And if that name sounds familiar, he was the father of Shawn Stasiak, who was, of course, in WCW, in the then WWF, and of course during the Invasion angle, where he got tossed by The Rock several times and just thrown wherever, whether it was just back through the curtain or sidestepping him or whatever the case might be. It was a running gag in the Invasion angle all the way, and they even had a match. I think Rock and Shawn Stasiak had a match for a while down the line, at least once, if I remember. But as far as Stan the Man goes, I mean, he was a guy, one of the few that used the heart punch and knew how to use it. And people say, "Oh, wrestling's fake or shit," which, to some degree it is, and it's scripted and all that shit. But at the same time, the heart punch was one of the more legitimate moves, because if you fucking punch someone in the heart for real and did it the right way and hit them hard enough, you could literally stop their heart. This was not a gimmick. This punch was legit if used correctly or incorrectly, because of course people will not want to read the little warnings that they do. Don't try it at home. They'll fucking try it and they'll fucking kill someone over it. And it's a very devastating move for sure. In fact, get someone to fucking punch someone in the heart. And if you do it, you're a fucking idiot. But at the end of the day, I can't stop them from not doing it. It's 2018. If they want to fucking do it, they can do it. If they want to become a fucking tree, if they want to identify as a tree, they can fucking identify as a tree. I don't give a fuck. But that's another story for another time. What we're talking about, though, is Stan the Man, and of course, his longtime manager, a Hall of Famer in his own right, the Grand Wizard. And there's a lot of this, so this might be a multi-part thing. But first off, his accomplishments in the Cauliflower Alley Club. In the other category, I don't really think they had like a pioneer thing at that point or whatever he would have been in, but that was 1996, the year before he passed away, unfortunately, in 1997. So he was inducted for that. Hopefully he was there for that as well. For Georgia Championship Wrestling, and a lot of these championships will have a little bit of a background, so I might as well take the time for that as well. For Georgia Championship Wrestling, the NWA Macon Heavyweight Championship. And basically what that title was, Macon, Georgia, obviously a portion of Georgia. That title was exclusively defended most of the time in the Macon City Auditorium and the Macon Coliseum through the 70s at that point. Just an example of people who held that title. Not even around the time that Stasiak held it, but even towards them, names like Bob Armstrong, The Bullet, Mr. Wrestling 2, Ole Anderson, even J.J. Dillon had a run of it. J.J. Dillon was a wrestler for a while. Maybe you'll remember him just as the manager of the Four Horsemen, but he was an accomplished wrestler for what he did. And of course, Wildfire Tommy Rich, Wahoo McDaniel, even Abdul the Butcher held this thing. But, it was one of the more... It was the territory title within a territory, if that makes sense. Because they also had a Columbus heavyweight title as well, or a Columbus television or something around that. Georgia had a lot of belts. If you look back on the territory, it by itself had a lot of belts. So they had to have several shows throughout the state of Georgia. So that would make sense if you had a show in Macon and a show in Columbus and a show in maybe Atlanta, maybe for a bigger show, something like that. Maybe at the Omni, something like that. in that area. So it's kind of the NWA being condensed into a state, but also having their own champions of their own separate areas, and they tour that way. Something you don't really see nowadays. The most common example I could use is the United Kingdom Championship for WWE. And that thing's been in ICW. That thing's been in Progress. I believe. No, I don't think it was in. I don't think it was in Defiant. I think it was somewhere else that I'm probably forgetting. Shit. I don't remember, but in the UK it's been pretty much all over. In the States it's been all over. It's pretty much a country title used properly. But for Maple Leaf Wrestling, we have the NWA International Tag Team Champions, the Toronto version with Man Mountain Campbell. I'm not familiar with that name. For NWA All-Star Wrestling, the Canadian Tag Team titles for the NWA Vancouver version with Dutch Savage. Interesting name. For Big Time Wrestling, not to be confused with the current Big Time Wrestling, this was eventually became World Class. The NWA Brass Knuckles Championship. Now, with that title, basically, you could use brass knuckles, and were worn by the combatants, and they were legal. Of course, foreign objects would be a disqualifiable offense, but it's basically like a taped fist. Try saying that 5 times fast. A taped fist match, but you just tape fucking brass knucks on there and just have at it. See what happens. Held that 3 times. The Texas Heavyweight title 1 time, and the Texas Tag titles with Killer Tim Brooks once. For NWA Western States Sports, which was, of course, just Western States, their version of the Brass Knuckles title in Amarillo once. For the National Wrestling Federation, their North American title once. For Pacific Northwest Wrestling, the one in Oregon, or Oregon, depending how you want to say it. Very prestigious title at the time. 6-time, as a matter of fact, Pacific Northwest Heavyweight Champion. If you held that title, you were a big name. People like Mr. Perfect, people like Roddy Piper, a who's who of wrestling have held that title. Speaking of titles, you wanting to hold the Pacific Northwest Tag titles 8 times. Once with the Mad Russian, once with Mighty Ursus. I hope I'm saying these right, by the way. Once with Haru Suzuki, one with Tony Morano, one with Dutch Savage, one with Buddy Rose, and twice with Billy Jack Haynes. For the Ring Around the Northwest newsletter, the rest of the year 1965, and when we come back, we will continue this, because this is going to take a while with every single Legacy inductee, for sure.